welcome to Meet the Patient, brought to you by A Life in a Day. As part of our ongoing commitment to enable people working in the healthcare sector to increase their understanding, empathy and patient focus, in our series of interviews, we're asking people living with a condition or a disease to go beyond the clinical and share their personal story that demonstrates the impact it has on their relationships, family, friendships, work and emotional well-being. So today our focus is on heart failure, and I'm really happy to introduce you to Claire Shepherd. So Claire, you and I haven't met before, but I've been following your story of living with heart failure on your social media platform, and I'm really happy to have this opportunity to talk to you. So thank you very much for joining me. So I'd like to begin by asking you, could you tell me, what do you think is the one thing people need to be most aware of when they think about living with heart failure?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one for people to understand because it's a hidden illness. A lot of my friends in particular, they're like, Claire, you seem fine today. Absolutely, they don't see the days where I'm lying in bed, sleeping like a pussycat most of the day because I'm so tired from the day before of work, being a mum, just being a human being, really, living with a medical condition. Yeah, I think that's the hardest because it is a hidden, it's not you're in a wheelchair or walking around with a stick or anything like that. Yeah, it's the hardest, and people just don't understand you can be fine one day and the next day completely wiped out.
And have you had any bad experiences from people not understanding that? I mean, you know, do people get frustrated with you? Have they ever said anything that's upset you because they just don't get it?
Yeah, in the 9 years since I've been diagnosed, I have lost a lot of friendships because I'm not fun Claire as much as they want or need me to be. And I think it's made me realise the friendships that I did have before, they were quite codependent, as in then dependent on me. And when I couldn't achieve what they wanted me to in our friendships, then they abandoned me.
And could we talk about family? I know you mentioned that your heart failure diagnosis was pregnancy induced, but could you share a story about how living with heart failure impacts on your family life?
Because it's only the three of us, my husband, myself and my little boy, I do have a wonderful father that lives nearby. Sadly, my husband's parents died a couple of years after Flynn was born. So it has basically been us three. But I think that's made our family dynamic so much stronger. I think our love for each other, my husband and I, because really when your wife is diagnosed and told you can't have any more children, a lot of men, I understand, would probably leave and want to remarry and have many more children with somebody else. But I think I realised that, especially since diagnosis, how much love my husband has for me as a person, not just a wife who can give him children. And it's made our family dynamic so strong. And we're just so blessed to have Flynn as well. And we put all our time and attention into him, but then we have joint goals as well. So yeah, I think 3 is our magic number.
So Flynn is 9 now. What have you and your husband decided to share with him about your diagnosis?
When he was little, I think I was so worried that if I told him too young, he would think I'm the reason mummy is poorly. I'm the reason mummy has a bad heart. And I never wanted him to feel that he was, although the pregnancy was the cause, I would go through it, what I went through the first couple of years, especially since diagnosis, 1,000 times over to have him. So I never wanted him to ever, too early to understand things. So he always knew mummy liked to have a sleep. He knew mummy took tablets because I explained to him, especially from the safety side of things, I didn't want him taking any of my tablets. So I explained that to him. But it wasn't until probably he was about 5 or 6, then I started you know, showing him videos on YouTube about cardiomyopathy, about heart failure, because of the support groups that I'm on. A lot of the mums have actually written little stories, how they told their children. So I learned a lot. I tried to gather as much information before I started talking to him about it. But then also over the years, I've done a lot of awareness as well, for different media areas, and he was reading them in, you know, I'd read them to him in the magazines or on the news, or so he has had been almost drip fed him. But now he's 9, I could really sit down and tell him absolutely everything because I felt he was ready to understand. Plus my cardiomyopathy might impact him. He has to go for an echocardiogram. So which will probably hopefully come back all fine and negative, but I especially thought I needed to tell him and let him watch a YouTube video on how an cardiographer works, why they do their job, how it was developed. Just so that I think knowledge is power, but it's how you discuss, especially with a child, how you drip feed and discuss it. And honesty is very, very important, I think, with children as well. I wanted him to be left with the memories of a mother who utterly, utterly loved him, but was strong and not only just didn't wallow in despair or anything about being diagnosed with something as life-restricting as cardiomyopathy, but that I wanted to make it something good out of it to help save lives, especially postpartum cardiomyopathy.
Can I ask you, you mentioned that people don't see the tiredness or they don't see Claire sleeping, and you talked about, you know, how supportive and loving your husband has been, but has there been ways that it's impacted in your relationship with him, that where he may have had to take on more responsibilities because you've not been well, or anything like that you could share with us?
Yeah, especially the first probably, well, as soon as I was diagnosed, I wasn't allowed to breastfeed at all. And Flynn wasn't allowed to be, although I had a private room on the ward, I wasn't allowed to have him there because it was so critical that any extra stress could cause so many issues. So bless his heart, to be a first-time dad, with not a lot of family support there, to have to try and work from home as well as doing all the feeding, because he was a very hungry baby, not being there, you know, worried about your wife, worried about, and I can be able to cope with the newborn. Yeah, he took on a lot of responsibility the first couple of weeks, and when I was at home as well. And I think also over the years, especially the first probably 5 years were the worst, when I was in and out of hospital all the time because of them changing my medication levels or trying me out on new meds to see if it will improve my heart function. Yeah, it was a really scary time, and I think it takes a really strong person and a lot of love to be there for somebody, especially in that much responsibility as well. So even to this day, I still feel that I failed. As Flynn grows older, all his brothers, all his friends have brothers and sisters, or when my friends have more children, I am so happy for them, but I physically can't hold a newborn baby because of the PTSD from what happened.
Could you tell us how living with heart failure impacts on your emotional well-being?
To be honest, it's a lot. A lot every day. I'd say even more so than taking the right medication and knowing when to rest because of the fatigue. It's a lot because I still, although it's 10 years down the line, I still do have those nights where I genuinely don't believe I'll wake up in the morning. Again, hearing about my friends' pregnancies, going on to have more children, and they moan about the stresses of their lives having 2 or 3. And I just sit there and I think, you are so lucky. You don't understand how lucky you are. There are people out there that would kill to have what you have. It's also, silly things like probably when you go on holiday, you can't eat certain things, you can't go on roller coaster rides, you can't. I think also I get very fatigued in the airport or on long walks, carrying things over long distances. It's always, my brain is going, Claire, you do not have this condition, we can get on with this today. But then my body goes, stop, you really need to stop. And especially in the heat and things like that as well. Yeah, but the mental health side, I genuinely believe above all of that is the hardest thing to live with.
What sort of support do you receive for the mental impacts of living with heart failure?
None. Absolutely none. I at the diagnosis, along with cardiac rehab, I was sent for, I forget what type of therapy they call it, but basically to knowing how to cope with living with a new medical condition. But I was never sent for anything about being told at 30 years old and happily married you couldn't have any more children. Yet they won't sterilize me, but another child could kill me. So there was never that discussion. It's only through free counselling that I've had through work and so forth. And I think also that's helped me, but also being part of like a large charity that I help out with to raise awareness for cardiomyopathy. Their support has been amazing through and getting to know other people that live with cardiomyopathy, that you're not alone. You're not alone. There are other people going through exactly the same thing as yourself. So from my local health board, it's been dire, and so has my whole prognosis really. Had I been with the right consultant from diagnosis, I was told this recently, had I been with the right consultant, I probably could have recovered and gone on to have another one. There would always be that risk, but that would go back, but it would be much better than being told you would die if you got pregnant again. So yeah, it has been very, very poor, and that's what I'm trying to help my Welsh Heart sisters with at the moment, is knowing their rights to be referred to England for healthcare. Despite the fact that, you know, healthcare is devolved in Wales, we can still go to England for the better specialist to be treated. And that's very much, I feel, my mission this year now, but it has been awful.
Could you tell us how heart failure has impacted on your work life and your career?
So I was full-time when I was pregnant with Flynn, and I am very fortunate that I work for an amazing company that have just supported me all along my journey. My doctor, my consultant, wanted to medically retire me at 30, and I said no. I want to contribute financially and in any way I can, as much as I can. So he allowed me to try 1 day a week, going back to my position. And then thankfully I could, over the years, I've increased it to 24 hours a week. So I do two and a half days, but I work mostly from home. So that helps a lot, being able to manage my medical condition. And I only have to go in to the office twice a month. But even then, like, they're so supportive that if I say I'm just not well today, as long as I can work from home, then they're great. Obviously I can take sick days, but I try not to do that unless I'm severely poorly. But yeah, I think also being ill, as I just turned 40, I almost felt like I missed out on a lot of my 30s, because I've been so ill and I've been so focused on just being here every day to watch Flynn grow up and trying to get my heart as better as I can, so that I can. My goal is to dance at his wedding with him, and yeah, that my career has kind of taken a back step to just enjoying every single day that I am here, and very fortunate with my job role and the company I work for that they just allow me to work, and as long as I obviously achieve targets and I do the best I can, I don't think, it's almost like having a big brother that's constantly there in the background looking after you. I'm very fortunate, whereas a lot of people I understand don't have that. So yeah.
Claire, can you tell me, what's the one thing about your condition that you try to hide from your loved ones?
Mental health aspect, very much so. Yeah, which it does, although maybe I can hide it in everyday life, and some might sound very odd, but in my sleep, I can start shouting in the middle of the night. I can sleepwalking, things like that, because of course it's subconsciously your brain trying to process everything, isn't it? But it comes out in my sleep. My poor husband, the amount of times that I shout, I wake him up at night and he's like, Claire, what was that about? And it's like, well, I think it's because I do talk about it, but probably maybe not as much as I should do. But it is the mental health side of the condition, which I generally, now living long term with cardiomyopathy, that is the biggest. And until recently, until I had a new consultant and had more support, I felt very, very alone, because I was signed back to my GP's care on year 6 after diagnosis. Then basically saying, my cardiologist saying, well, you're still alive. Your heart is functioning fine on the medication you're on. I'm going to put you back under your GP's care, and then if there's any problems, they can refer you back to me. But bye-bye, basically. And now I've learned that should have happened. I should have always had constant reviews and echocardiograms, blood pressure checks. I should at least have had a cardiac nurse available for me to call. I think that's impacted my mental health as well. That everything I've gone through and fought, because I am a strong person naturally, I didn't really have to, because if I had the right support, I probably wouldn't be at the stage of shouting in my sleep and maybe having the mental side of things that I'm left with because of it.
And you talked about working with a charity and raising awareness for people living with heart failure and conditions that cause heart failure. So in your experience, what is the one thing that no one speaks about in relation to living with heart failure that you're happy to share with us?
I think the main discussion around the support groups, as a female, is that probably the difficulty in getting diagnosed, because being a first-time mum, you're seen as an over-anxious mother, you're just not getting enough sleep. There's no empathy, especially amongst male cardiologists, it seems, and maybe some female, but I've only ever seen male ones. They just don't understand that we are not just a number, we're not just a body part. We are human beings as well, attached to that diagnosis and to that heart problem. Yeah, empathy, understanding, even long-term patience with your patient. That's the big one that's come out, and then also the mental health side of long-term living with the condition as well. I think there's the two areas that a consensus is that the healthcare that they've had from different medical professionals is that it's a bit lacking in those areas. Well, it's completely lacking in those areas, to be honest. So yeah.
So what's been the most unexpected impact for you of living with heart failure?
This might sound odd, but I'm thankful for my diagnosis, because it has made me grow so much, that I've learnt my weaknesses, I've learnt my strengths, and I don't believe if I didn't have a diagnosis and with such a debilitating condition as well, long-term one, that I wouldn't be the person I am today. not to be big-headed, but I'm very proud of the person that I've grown to be because of the years of living with such with cardiomyopathy, with heart failure. So it makes you appreciate every single day that you are still here. And then the friendships that you have, the experiences you have. Traveling is very important to us as a family. We go away, and it sounds very odd, but every like 8 to 10 weeks, we try and get away into Europe as much as we can to build those memories that not just full of work and everyday life. They're special experiences and memories that we'll always have together if tomorrow is meant to be my last day. So I think it's made me value life a lot more and not be scared of death as much anymore. I think that's very odd. That's changed me a lot. I find that fascinating as well, that you can, to me, heaven is on earth, and it's your friends, it's your family, it's who you fill your days with, how you fill your days. Yeah, I'm very thankful. It sounds so odd to say that, but I'm so very thankful for it, because I think some people coast through life and take everything for granted, and I try my best just not to, especially now. So yeah, I think I'll always be thankful, although it's been a hard journey, and it will continue to be, but I'm hoping that my journey is a long one.
Thank you, Claire. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our time, but I'd just like to say thank you so much for agreeing to speak to me and sharing your story with me, because it has been absolutely fascinating. And I'm so glad that I've had this opportunity to speak to you, because I really do feel like your experiences and the way you've explained things to us will really help people to understand what it's like to live with heart failure. So thank you to everyone who's listened. And if you're interested in finding out more about the work that we do, please follow A Life in a Day on our LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram pages. Thank you.